Vasilisa the Beautiful. In a certain kingdom there once lived a merchant. He had been married 12 years and had only one daughter, Vasilisa the Beautiful. When the girl was 8 years old, her mother became ill. On her deathbed, she called Vasilisa to her and drew a little doll out from under the blanket. She gave it to her, saying, "Listen, Vasilisushka, remember and carry out my last words. I am dying, and along with my blessing, I leave you this doll. Keep it with you always, and show it to no one. And when some grief comes upon you, give it something to eat and ask its advice. It will eat, and then it will tell you what to do." Then the mother kissed her daughter and died. After his wife's death, the merchant grieved as was fitting, and then began to think of marrying again. He was a good man, there was no shortage of brides for him, but the one who pleased him most was a widow, already somewhat in years, who had 2 daughters of her own, nearly the same age as Vasilisa. A woman experienced then, both as a housekeeper and as a mother. The merchant married the widow, but he was deceived, and she was not a kind mother for his Vasilisa. Vasilisa was the first beauty in the whole village. The stepmother and her daughters envied her beauty and tormented her with every kind of labor, so that she might grow thin from toil and be blackened by the wind and sun. There was no living for her at all. Vasilisa bore it all without complaint, and grew more beautiful and full with every day, while the stepmother and her daughters grew thin and ugly from spite, even though they always sat with folded hands like fine ladies. This happened because Vasilisa's little doll helped her. Without it, how could the girl have ever managed all the work? For her part, Vasilisa herself would not eat, but would always save the tastiest morsel for the doll. And in the evening, once everyone had lain down, she would shut herself in the little closet where she lived and feed it, saying, "Here, little doll, eat, and hear my grief. I live in my father's house, and I have no joy in it. My cruel stepmother drives me from the white world. Teach me how to live and what to do." The doll would eat and then give her advice and comfort her in her grief, and by morning the doll would finish all the work for Vasilisa. She had only to rest in the shade and pick flowers, and already the beds were weeded, the cabbages watered, the water carried, and the stove heated. The doll even showed Vasilisa an herb against sunburn. It was good living with the little doll. Several years passed. Vasilisa grew up and became a young woman ready for marriage. Every suitor in town came courting Vasilisa. No one so much as looked at the stepmother's daughters. The stepmother grew angrier than ever and answered every suitor, "I will not give away the younger before the elder." And having sent the suitors off, she took out her spite on Vasilisa with blows. Now it happened once that the merchant had to leave home for a long time on business. The stepmother moved the household to another house, and near this house stood a dense forest, and in the forest, in a clearing, stood a hut, and in the hut lived Baba Yaga. She let no one near and ate people like chickens. Having settled into the new house, the merchant's wife kept sending the hated Vasilisa into the forest on one errand or another, but the girl always returned home safely. The little doll showed her the way and would not let her come near Baba Yaga's hut. Autumn came. The stepmother gave the 3 girls their evening tasks. One she set to weaving lace, another to knitting stockings, and Vasilisa to spinning, and gave each her quota. She put out every light in the house but the one candle where the girls sat at their work, and then the stepmother went off to bed. The girls worked. The candle burned low. One of the stepmother's daughters took the scissors to trim the wick, and instead, as her mother had bidden her, as if by accident, put the candle out entirely. "What are we to do now?" said the girls. "There isn't a light in the whole house, and our tasks aren't finished. Someone must run to Baba Yaga for fire." "I have light enough from my pins," said the one who wove lace. "I won't go." "Nor will I," said the one who knit stockings. "I have light enough from my needles." "It is you who must go for the fire," the 2 of them shouted together. "Off with you to Baba Yaga!" And they pushed Vasilisa out of the room. Vasilisa went to her little closet, set supper before the doll, and said, "Here, little doll, eat and hear my grief. I am being sent for fire to Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga will eat me." The doll ate, and its eyes began to shine like 2 candles. "Don't be afraid, Vasilisushka," it said. "Go where you are sent, and keep me with you always. While I am with you, nothing will happen to you at Baba Yaga's." Vasilisa made herself ready, put her little doll in her pocket, crossed herself, and went into the dense forest. She walked on, trembling. Suddenly a horseman rode past her, himself white, dressed all in white, his horse white, and the harness on his horse was white. And just then a bit of light came over the eastern treetops. She walked further, and another horseman rode by, himself red, dressed all in red, on a red horse. And then the sun began to rise. Vasilisa had walked all through the night and all through the day, and only toward the evening of the next day came out into the clearing where Baba Yaga's hut stood. The fence around the hut was made of human bones. On the fence were human skulls with eyes. Instead of gateposts, there were human legs. Instead of bolts, human hands. Instead of a lock, a mouth with sharp teeth. Vasilisa was struck dumb with horror and stood rooted to the spot. Suddenly another horseman rode by, himself black, dressed all in black, on a black horse. He galloped up to Baba Yaga's gate and vanished as if he had sunk into the ground. And just then night fell. But the darkness did not last long. The eyes lit up in all the skulls on the fence, and the whole clearing grew as bright as day. Vasilisa trembled with fear, but not knowing where to run, she stayed where she was. Soon a terrible noise was heard in the forest. The trees creaked, the dry leaves crackled, and out of the forest came Baba Yaga, riding in a mortar, driving with a pestle, sweeping away her tracks behind her with a broom. She rode up to the gate and stopped. Sniffing the air around her, she said, "Ugh, it reeks of mortal breath. Who is here?" In fear, Vasilisa came up to the old woman. Bowing low, she said, "It is I, grandmother. My stepmother's daughters have sent me to you for fire." "Very well," said Baba Yaga, "I know them. Live with me a while first and work for me, and then I will give you fire. But if not, I will eat you." Then she turned to the gate and said, "My strong bolts, unlock. My wide gates, open." The gates opened and Baba Yaga rode in, whistling. Vasilisa went in after her, and then everything closed again. Coming into the hut, Baba Yaga stretched herself out and said to Vasilisa, "Bring out what there is in the oven. I'm hungry." To see in the gathering dark, Vasilisa lit a stick torch from the fire in one of the skulls on the fence. She began carrying food from the oven and serving it to Baba Yaga, food enough for 10 people. From the cellar she brought water, beer, and wine. The old woman ate it all, drank it all. To Vasilisa she left only a little cabbage soup, a crust of bread, and a bit of pork. Baba Yaga began to lie down to sleep and said, "Tomorrow, when I have driven off, see that you sweep the yard, sweep out the hut, cook the dinner, get the linen ready, and then go to the storeroom. Take a quarter measure of wheat, clean out all the black grain from it, and see that it is all done, or I will eat you." Having given this order, Baba Yaga began to snore, and Vasilisa set the old woman's leftovers before the doll. Bursting into tears, she said, "Here, little doll, eat, and hear my grief. Baba Yaga has given me hard work and threatens to eat me if I do not finish it all. Help me." The doll answered, "Do not be afraid, Vasilisa the Beautiful. Eat your supper, say your prayers, and go to sleep. Morning is wiser than evening." Baba Yaga was already up when Vasilisa woke very early the next morning. She looked out the window and saw that the skull's eyes were going out. Then the white horseman flashed by, and it grew fully light. The red horseman flashed by, and the sun rose. Baba Yaga got into her mortar and rode out of the yard, driving with the pestle, sweeping away her track with the broom. Vasilisa was left alone. She looked over Baba Yaga's house, marveling at the abundance of everything in it, and stood wondering which work to take up first. She looked, and all the work was already done. The doll was picking the last black grains out of the wheat. "Ah, my deliverer," said Vasilisa to the doll, "you have saved me from disaster." "All that is left for you is to cook the dinner," answered the doll, climbing into Vasilisa's pocket. "Cook it, Godspeed, and rest well." Toward evening, Vasilisa laid the table and waited for Baba Yaga. Dusk began to fall, the black horseman flashed past the gate, and it grew fully dark. Only the skull's eyes shone. The trees creaked, the leaves crackled. Baba Yaga was coming. Vasilisa went out to meet her. "Is everything done?" asked Baba Yaga. "See for yourself, grandmother," said Vasilisa. Baba Yaga looked everything over and was vexed that there was nothing to be angry about, and said, "Well, good." Then she said, "My faithful servants, my heart's friends, grind my wheat." 3 pairs of hands appeared, seized the wheat, and carried it out of sight. Baba Yaga ate her fill, began to lie down to sleep, and again gave Vasilisa her orders. "Tomorrow do the same as today, and besides that, take the poppy seed from the storeroom and clean the dirt out of it, grain by grain. It seems someone has mixed earth into it out of spite." Having said this, the old woman turned to the wall and began to snore, and Vasilisa set about feeding her little doll. The doll ate and said to her, "Pray to God and go to sleep. Morning is wiser than evening. Everything will be done, Vasilisushka." In the morning, Baba Yaga drove off in her mortar, and Vasilisa and the doll completed all the work. The woman came back, looked everything over, and said, "My faithful servants, my heart's friends, press the oil from the poppy seed." 3 pairs of hands appeared, seized the poppy seed, and carried it out of sight. Baba Yaga sat down to dinner. She ate, and Vasilisa stood by in silence. "Why do you say nothing to me?" said Baba Yaga. "You stand there like a mute." "I did not dare," answered Vasilisa, "but if you will allow it, I should like to ask you something." "Ask then, though not every question leads to good. Know too much and you grow old too soon." "I only wish to ask you, grandmother, about what I have seen. As I was coming to you, a horseman on white overtook me, himself white and dressed all in white. Who was he?" "That is my bright day," answered Baba Yaga. "Then another horseman overtook me, on a red horse, himself red and dressed all in red. Who was he?" "That is my red sun," answered Baba Yaga. "And what does the black horseman mean, grandmother, who overtook me at your very gate?" "That is my dark night, all of them my faithful servants." Vasilisa remembered the 3 pairs of hands and said nothing. "Why do you not ask further?" asked Baba Yaga. "That is enough for me. You said yourself, grandmother, that knowing too much makes one old too soon." Baba Yaga said, "It is well that you only ask about what you have seen outside my yard, and not within it. I do not love to have my dirty linen carried out of the house, and those who are too curious, I eat. Now I will ask you something. How is it you managed to finish the work I set you?" "My mother's blessing helps me," answered Vasilisa. "So that is it. Get out of my house then, blessed daughter. I have no use for the blessed." She dragged Vasilisa out of the hut and pushed her out through the gate. She took down a skull with burning eyes, stuck it on a stick, and gave it to Vasilisa. Baba Yaga said, "Here is fire for your stepmother's daughters. Take it. That is what they sent you here for, after all." Vasilisa ran home by the light of the skull, which only went out with the coming of the morning. Then at last, toward evening of the next day, she reached her own house. As she came near the gate, she thought to throw the skull away. Surely, she thought, they no longer need fire at home. But suddenly a hollow voice spoke from the skull. "Do not throw me away. Carry me to your stepmother." She looked at the stepmother's house, and seeing not a single light in any window, resolved to go in with the skull. This time she was met kindly, and they told her that ever since she had gone there had been no fire at all in the house. They could not strike a spark themselves, and whatever fire was brought from the neighbors went out the moment it was carried into the room. "Perhaps your fire will hold," said the stepmother. They carried the skull into the room, and its eyes looked straight at the stepmothers and her daughters and burned into them. They tried to hide, but wherever they fled, the eyes followed them everywhere, and by morning they were all 3 burned to ashes. Vasilisa alone was untouched. In the morning, Vasilisa buried the skull in the earth and locked up the house. She went into town and asked to lodge with a certain old woman who had no kin. There she lived, waiting for her father's return. One day she said to the old woman, "It is tiresome for me to sit idle, grandmother. Go and buy me the best flax there is. I will at least spin." The old woman bought good flax. Vasilisa sat down to the work, and it went swiftly in her hands, and the thread came out even and fine as hair. A great deal of thread gathered, and it was time to think of weaving, but no reed could be found fine enough for Vasilisa's thread. No one would even try to make one. Vasilisa asked her little doll for help, and the doll said, "Bring me any old reed, any old shuttle, and some horsehair. I will make everything for you." Vasilisa brought all that was needed and went to sleep, and by morning the doll had made a fine loom. By the end of winter, the linen was woven, so fine that it could be passed through a needle's eye in place of thread. In spring, the linen was bleached, and Vasilisa said to the old woman, "Sell this linen, grandmother, and keep the money for yourself." The old woman looked at the cloth and said, "No, child, cloth like this is fit for no one but the Tsar to wear. I will take it to the palace." The old woman went to the Tsar's palace, walking back and forth beneath the windows. The Tsar saw her and asked, "What do you want, old woman?" "Your Majesty," she answered, "I have brought something wonderful, and I will show it to no one but you." The Tsar ordered the old woman brought in, and when he saw the linen, he marveled. "What do you want for it?" asked the Tsar. "It has no price, Father Tsar. I have brought it to you as a gift." The Tsar thanked her and sent her away with presents. The Tsar wanted shirts made from that linen, but nowhere could they find a seamstress willing to undertake such fine work. They searched a long while, and at last the Tsar sent for the old woman and said, "If you know how to spin and weave such linen, you must know how to sew shirts from it too." "It was not I, sovereign, who spun and wove the linen," said the old woman. "It was the work of my foster child, a young girl." "Then let her sew them." The old woman went home and told Vasilisa everything. Vasilisa said, "I knew this task would fall to me." She shut herself in her room and set to work, sewing without pause, and soon a dozen shirts were ready. The old woman carried the shirts to the Tsar, while Vasilisa washed, combed her hair, dressed, and sat down by the window to wait and see what would happen. She saw the Tsar's servant coming into the old woman's yard. He came into the room and said, "The Tsar Sovereign wishes to see the craftswoman who made his shirts and to reward her with his own royal hands." Vasilisa went and appeared before the Tsar's eyes. The moment the Tsar saw Vasilisa the Beautiful, he fell hopelessly in love with her. "No, my beauty," he said, "I will not part from you. You shall be my bride." And the Tsar took Vasilisa by her white hands and sat her down beside him, and soon after the wedding was celebrated. Before long, Vasilisa's father returned too. He rejoiced at his daughter's fortune and came to live with her. She took the old woman to live with her as well, and Vasilisa carried the little doll in her pocket to the end of her days.